Family will burn your house down and then hand you a bucket, expecting a thank you for the water. That's the closest I can get to summing up what my own brother did to me. Not a stranger. Not an ex. My brother, the kid I taught to ride a bike, the kid whose black eye I iced after his first real fight, the same kid who once told our mother he wanted to be just like Eric when he grew up. My name is Eric Starr. I'm 37 years old, and until last January, I thought I understood exactly what my life looked like. I co-owned a branding and marketing agency on King Street in downtown Charleston, South Carolina, called Palmetto Row Creative. I'd built it from a card table in my apartment 8 years earlier with a woman named Camille Foster, who was, at the time all this started, my business partner and absolutely nothing more. I was married to a labor and delivery nurse named Lauren, who I'd been with for 9 years and married to for 5. We had a little brick ranch house in West Ashley with a dog named Biscuit, who snored louder than a diesel engine, and on weekends we'd take the boat out past Shem Creek and pretend we knew what we were doing with a fishing rod. I tell you all this so you understand what was actually at stake, because by the time my younger brother Nathan finished what he started, I didn't just lose a marriage. I nearly lost a business, a decade of friendships, and for a while, my own ability to trust that people who say they love you actually mean it. Let's go back to the beginning, because there's a beginning to this. And it starts long before the lie itself. Nathan is 33, 4 years younger than me, and growing up we were close in the uncomplicated way brothers are close, before life starts handing out different report cards. He was the funnier one. I was the more stubborn one. Our dad worked at the Naval Yard in North Charleston, and our mom did billing for a dental office. And neither of them had 2 nickels to rub together, so Nathan and I grew up sharing a room, sharing clothes, sharing the particular kind of hunger that makes you want something bigger for yourself. I went and got it. Nathan didn't, and I don't think he ever forgave the gap between those 2 outcomes. He tried plenty of things. A car detailing business that folded in 18 months. A stint selling solar panel contracts door-to-door in Somerville that ended when the company got investigated for predatory sales practices. Nathan swore he didn't know. And maybe he didn't. Then, 3 years ago, he sank almost every dollar he had into a food truck called Low Country Smash, parked outside breweries on James Island, slinging smash burgers. I actually liked the burgers. I told him so more than once. But a food truck in Charleston is a brutal business. Permitting costs, commissary kitchen fees, a truck that broke down twice in one summer. By the fall before all this happened, Nathan was 6 months behind on payments to the guy who financed his truck, and he called me on a rainy evening in September, asking if I could loan him $11,000. I said no. Not because I didn't love my brother, because I'd already loaned him $9,000 2 years earlier for the truck's engine repair, money I never saw a cent of back, and Lauren and I had just started talking seriously about trying for a baby. Camille and I also had a shared rule at Palmetto Row: no personal loans between partners or family that could ever be mistaken for company money. Because we'd both watched other small agencies implode over exactly that kind of blurred line. I can't do it this time, man, I told him over the phone. Not because I don't want to help you. I just can't put us in that position again. There was a long pause. Then Nathan said something I should have paid more attention to. Must be nice, he said, having a business partner who'd bail you out in a heartbeat, and a brother you won't even hear out. I laughed it off at the time. He's just frustrated, I told myself. He'll cool down. I did not know it yet, but that sentence was the first crack in a dam that would take 4 months to fully break. 3 weeks later, the truck got repossessed. Nathan lost the commissary lease. He was staying on a friend's couch in North Charleston when he called Lauren, not me, Lauren, and asked if he could crash with us for 2, maybe 3 weeks, tops, while he got back on his feet. Lauren has a heart the size of the Ashley River. She didn't even ask me first. She just told him yes, and then told me about it that night over dinner. Already halfway through explaining why it was the right thing to do before I'd said a single word. He's your brother Eric, she said. We have the guest room. It's not forever. She wasn't wrong, and honestly, I wanted to believe it wouldn't be forever too. Nathan moved in on the second Thursday of October. I remember because it was the same week Palmetto Row landed a rebrand contract with a regional grocery chain that would end up being the biggest account in company history, and Camille and I stayed at the office until nearly 10 that night, celebrating with a couple of contract-signing beers from the mini-fridge. Nothing more dramatic than two exhausted business partners high-fiving over a spreadsheet. I didn't know it yet, but that late night at the office, completely innocent, completely explainable, was about to become Exhibit A in a story that wasn't true. Here's the thing about Nathan living in our house that I underestimated. He wasn't just a guest. He was a man who had just lost his business, his self-respect, and, in his mind, the family competition he didn't realize he was still running. And every single day he watched me leave for an office with my name on the wall, come home talking about client wins, while he sat in our guest room applying for warehouse jobs on his phone. Resentment doesn't announce itself. It seeps. It started small. Nathan would make little comments at dinner. Must be nice to have Camille backing you up on everything. Or, you two ever fight? Or is it just smooth sailing all the time? I brushed it off as the kind of thing a guy says when he's watching his older brother's life work while his own falls apart. Then it got specific. About 3 weeks into his stay, I came home late from a client dinner in downtown Charleston, a genuinely boring 2-hour meeting about packaging fonts with a seafood distributor, if you're curious, and found Nathan and Lauren sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open between them. "Hey," I said, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. "What's going on?" Lauren looked up, and there was something in her face I hadn't seen before. Not anger exactly, something quieter and worse. Suspicion, dressed up as concern. "Nathan was just showing me something," she said. Showing her what? I remember thinking, and feeling for the first time in 9 years, a small cold thread of unease work its way up my spine. It was a photo. Camille and I, at a restaurant patio on East Bay Street, laughing over what was, I promise you, a work dinner with 2 clients from the grocery chain account, both of whom happened to have stepped away from the table for the exact 3 seconds the photo was taken. In the picture, it looked like just the two of us, close together, laughing like there was nobody else on earth. "Where did you get this?" I asked Nathan. "Somebody in the group chat with the old football guys sent it around," he said, shrugging like it was nothing. "I just thought Lauren should see it. Didn't want her finding out some other way." Finding out some other way. Finding out what? Exactly? There was nothing to find out. But that sentence sat in the room like a lit match near a gas leak, and I watched my wife's face very carefully while it burned. "Lauren, that was a client dinner," I said. "The Hendersons were literally sitting right there. They'd just gotten up to look at the shrimp boats coming in." "I believe you," she said. But her voice had a wobble in it that told me something had already shifted, some small stone knocked loose that hadn't been there that morning. Nathan just sat there, quiet, watching, and I swear to you, for 1/2 of 1 second, I caught something on his face that didn't look like brotherly concern at all. It looked like satisfaction. I want to pause here and tell you something, because I think it matters for what comes later. I didn't confront him that night. I told myself I was being paranoid, that grief and jealousy make people act strange, that my brother wouldn't actually try to burn my marriage down over a business loan he didn't get. I gave him the benefit of every doubt I had. That was my mistake. Because Nathan wasn't done. Not even close. Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable. And remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. Over the following 2 months, the pattern repeated itself with a rhythm I only recognized in hindsight. Every time Camille and I closed a deal that required a late night, every time we texted about deadlines, every time she called the house phone because my cell was dead, Nathan was there. Watching, noting, and somehow always finding a way to be the one who brought it up to Lauren. Camille texted the house phone again. He'd mention at dinner, like a weather report. Late one too. Almost 11. It was 11 because we were finalizing a campaign launch for 6 a.m. the next morning. But Nathan never said that part. He just planted the timestamp and let Lauren's imagination do the rest. By December, Lauren had started asking questions that weren't really questions. "You and Camille spend a lot of time together. Does she have a boyfriend? Husband? I just think it's interesting how comfortable you two are. I answered every single one honestly. Camille was, at the time, engaged to a man named Trevor, who worked in commercial real estate over in Mount Pleasant. She and I had built something together that had nothing romantic in it whatsoever. We bickered over font choices and disagreed constantly about which clients to take. And if you'd told either of us 3 years ago we'd be sitting across from each other running a company with 7 employees, we'd have laughed you out of the room. But explaining the truth to someone who's already been handed a version of the lie doesn't work the way you'd hope. Lauren nodded along when I explained things. She said she understood. But something had already started closing off behind her eyes, brick by brick, and I didn't know it yet, but my brother was standing on the other side of that wall with a trowel in his hand, still building. The first week of January, Nathan finally got a warehouse job over in North Charleston, and I actually let myself believe things might settle. He'd have his own money, his own routine, maybe move out in a month or two like we'd originally talked about. I remember thinking, with something close to relief, maybe the worst of this is behind us. I did not know it yet, but the worst of it hadn't even started. Because 2 weeks later, on a Thursday evening in the second week of January, I came home from the office to find my suitcase sitting on the front porch, and Lauren standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and her eyes red from crying. "I know about you and Camille," she said. "I saw the messages, Eric. Don't you dare stand there and lie to me again." I remember standing on my own front steps, feeling the cold January air move through my jacket, and thinking, what messages? I had no idea what she was talking about. I had no idea that my own brother had spent 3 weeks building something in the dark that was about to blow my entire life apart. And I had absolutely no idea, standing there on that porch, just how far he was willing to go to make sure I finally lost. "What messages, Lauren?" I asked, and I want you to understand, I wasn't performing confusion. I was actually confused, standing on my own porch in the cold, looking at a suitcase I hadn't packed. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and turned the screen toward me. It was a text thread. My name at the top. My contact photo, the one from 3 Christmases ago. Me in a ridiculous elf hat Lauren made me wear. And underneath it messages I had never sent, in a font that looked exactly like mine, saying things I never said. Things like I can't stop thinking about last night, and we need to figure out what we're doing about Lauren. My stomach dropped through the porch boards. "Lauren, I did not write these," I said. "I swear to you, on my life, I never sent these messages." "Then how do I have them?" She snapped, and her voice cracked right down the middle. "How does Nathan have screenshots of your actual phone, Eric? He didn't make this up. He showed me your texts." Nathan. Of course it was Nathan. I found out the full mechanics of it only weeks later, after everything had already collapsed, but here's what actually happened. Pieced together from phone records, from a very uncomfortable conversation with our shared cell carrier's fraud department, and eventually, from Nathan himself. Sometime in December, while staying in our guest room and having full access to our home Wi-Fi and occasionally my unlocked phone charging on the kitchen counter, Nathan had taken real photos of real, boring, entirely professional texts between Camille and me, conversations about invoice numbers and font proofs, and used an editing app to swap out the words. Same contact photo. Same timestamp formatting. Same everything. Except the content had been rewritten into something that looked exactly like an affair. It is genuinely not hard to do, if you're determined and you have unsupervised access to someone's unlocked phone for even 90 seconds. And Nathan had months. "Lauren, I need you to listen to me," I said, standing on that porch, with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "Somebody edited those. I don't know how, but that is not something I sent. That's what everybody says," she said, and the way she said it, flat, exhausted, already decided, told me she'd rehearsed this conversation in her head 100 times before I ever got home. "Nathan showed me the messages 3 days ago. I've had time to think about this, Eric. I'm not doing this on impulse." "You've known for 3 days and you didn't tell me?" I felt something in my chest that wasn't quite anger yet. It was closer to disbelief. "You let my own brother living in our house convince you I was cheating without ever asking me?" "I asked Nathan," she said. "He said he didn't want to believe it either. He said he almost didn't show me because he didn't want to hurt you." I actually laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes out of you when your body doesn't know what else to do with the amount of betrayal currently entering your bloodstream. He didn't want to hurt me, I repeated. Lauren, my brother has been feeding you a story for months. The photo at the restaurant, the late-night texts, all of it, that was him. Not me. Stop trying to turn this around on your own brother, she said. And now she was crying again. Angry crying. The kind where the tears feel like betrayal themselves. He's the one who's been honest with me. You're the one who's been sneaking around with your business partner for I don't even know how long. She actually believes it. I thought, standing there. She believes a story a jealous, broke, 33-year-old man told her over 3 months, more than she believes 9 years with me. I want to be honest with you about something. In that moment, on that porch, something in me didn't break so much as it went very, very still. A kind of calm you only get once you realize a fight is already over before it started. I'm not going to stand on my own porch and beg you to believe I didn't do something I didn't do, I said. I'm going to go stay at Camille's fiancé's place tonight. I remember the way her face twisted when I said that. Like even that sentence didn't land the way I meant it to. And tomorrow I'm going to bring you every piece of proof I can find. And you're going to have to decide whether you actually want the truth, or whether you just want to be right. She didn't say anything. She just stepped back inside and closed the door, and I heard the deadbolt turn. I stood on that porch for a solid minute in the cold, staring at my own front door, before I picked up my suitcase and walked to my car. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last night I'd sleep in that house for 4 months. I called Camille from the car, sitting in our driveway with the engine running, and told her everything. There was a long silence on the line before she said, very quietly, Eric, I think I know what he did. It turned out Camille had gotten a strange friend request from an account with Nathan's face on it 2 months earlier, using a fake name, and had ignored it, assuming it was spam. She hadn't thought anything of it until now. The next morning, I did what anyone with a marketing background and a decade of experience reading fine print does when their reputation is on fire. I got organized. I pulled our actual phone carrier records showing every text Camille and I had exchanged going back 6 months, all of it exactly what it looked like. Business. I got the metadata off the original, unedited photos from the restaurant that night, timestamps proving the Hendersons were at the table 2 minutes before and 2 minutes after the compromising shot. I asked our IT contractor, a sharp guy named Jimmy Delaney, who managed our office network, to look at the screenshots Lauren had described to me over a very tense phone call, and he told me something I didn't expect. Those fonts are wrong, he said. iOS message text doesn't render like that if it's a real screenshot. Whoever made these used an app. I can prove it in about 20 minutes if you get me the actual images. Getting the actual images turned out to be the hard part. Lauren wouldn't send them to me, she said Nathan told her not to, in case I tried to destroy the evidence, which, looking back, is such a specifically paranoid thing to say that it should have tipped her off right there. It took me 9 days of calm, patient, increasingly frustrating phone calls before she agreed to let Jimmy look at her phone in person, with her present the entire time, purely so she could see for herself. Those 9 days were the worst of my life up to that point. Word had already spread through our shared friend group, the same guys I'd played rec league softball with for 6 years. The same couples we used to grill out with on Sundays. Nathan, it turned out, hadn't waited around to see how things shook out. He'd been telling people for weeks. By the time I found out, half of Charleston's West Ashley softball league thought I was the guy who'd cheated on his wife with his business partner, while his own broke brother slept on the couch trying to get back on his feet. I got dropped from the team group chat without a word. A guy named Tyler, who I'd known since college, texted me exactly once, "Man, I really thought you were better than that." I tried to explain. He never responded again. Camille had it almost as bad. 2 of our clients, including, mortifyingly, the seafood distributor whose packaging fonts had started this whole mess in Nathan's twisted timeline, heard secondhand gossip about some affair thing at Palmetto Row and got cold feet about renewing contracts, worried about instability at the agency. Camille's fiancé Trevor, to his enormous credit, never once doubted her, but even he told me later it had put a strain on things he hadn't expected. Fielding concerned calls from her family, asking if everything was okay. My own parents found out through a cousin before I ever got the chance to call them myself. My mother cried on the phone. Not because she believed it, she didn't. Not for a second. She'd known Camille for years and had actually helped cater our office holiday party, but because she couldn't understand why her younger son would do this to her older one. I don't understand where this came from, she kept saying. I don't understand what Nathan was thinking. I didn't understand it either. Not fully. Not yet. On the 9th day, Lauren finally agreed to meet me and Jimmy at a neutral coffee shop downtown, on King Street, 3 blocks from my own office, a location I'm sure Nathan would have found deeply symbolic if he'd known. Jimmy took her phone, pulled up the screenshots Nathan had sent her, and within about 15 minutes had the metadata on his laptop showing exactly what he suspected. The images had been run through a text message mockup app called ChatSim, downloaded onto a phone that traced back to a device registered under my brother's Apple ID. Lauren went white. He told me he'd never lie to me, she said, staring at the screen like it might change if she looked hard enough. He said family doesn't do that to family. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just watched my wife's entire understanding of the last 3 months collapse in real time, sitting across a small metal table with 2 untouched coffees going cold between us. I need to talk to him, she said. I think we both do, I said. But I need you to understand something first. Even if he made this up, and Lauren, he clearly did, you believed it. You let him convince you over months, without ever once asking me directly, without ever giving me the benefit of the doubt you'd give a stranger. You kicked me out of my own house on his word alone. She started crying again, but this time it didn't feel angry. It felt like grief. I know, she said. I know, Eric. I don't know what to say. I didn't know it yet, sitting in that coffee shop, but the hardest conversation of this entire ordeal wasn't the one I was about to have with my brother. It was the one I was about to have with myself. About whether any of this could ever actually be repaired. Nathan agreed to meet us that same evening at our parents' house in North Charleston because our mother, God bless her, point blank, refused to let this happen anywhere else. You are not doing this over text, she told him. You will look your brother in the eye. I want to tell you I walked into that house calm and composed, ready for some cinematic confrontation. The truth is my hands were shaking the entire drive over, and I sat in the driveway for almost 5 minutes before I could make myself go inside. Nathan was sitting at the same kitchen table we'd eaten dinner at as kids, still in his warehouse uniform, arms crossed, jaw tight. He looked, if I'm honest, like a man who already knew he'd been caught and had decided his only remaining move was to stop pretending. So, he said, before I'd even sat down. I guess Jimmy figured it out. You don't get to be casual about this, I said. My voice came out lower and steadier than I expected. You destroyed my marriage, Nathan. You told my wife I was cheating. You edited fake texts on my actual phone while you were living in my house eating my food. You wouldn't loan me 11 grand, he said, and there it was, 3 months of quiet resentment finally coming out flat and ugly across the kitchen table. You had it. Camille would have floated you the money in a heartbeat if the situation was reversed, and we both know it. You had this whole life, the company, the house, the wife who thinks you hung the moon, and you couldn't spare $11,000 for your own brother. So you decided to burn it all down instead, I said. That was the plan? If you couldn't have what I had, nobody could? He didn't answer that directly. He just looked down at the table, and for 1 second, 1 single second, I saw something that looked almost like the kid I grew up sharing a room with. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder. You always got everything, he said quietly. I got tired of watching it. Lauren, sitting beside me, finally spoke, and her voice was shaking with a fury I'd genuinely never heard from her before. You told me you'd never lie to me, Nathan. You sat in my kitchen and told me you almost didn't want to show me those messages because you didn't want to hurt your brother. Do you have any idea what you did? I kicked him out of our house. I told my own mother he was cheating. I have spent 9 days hating a man who did absolutely nothing wrong. Because you needed somebody to hate more than you hated yourself. Nathan didn't say anything to that. He just sat there, jaw working, staring at a spot on the table like it owed him money. Get out, our father said from the doorway. He'd been standing there the whole time, listening, and I hadn't even noticed him come in. Get your things out of Eric's guest room, and don't ask any of us for anything for a very long time. Nathan left that night without another word. He moved in with a coworker from the warehouse. Within a month, word had spread through our extended family about exactly what he'd done, and the family group chat, which used to buzz constantly with birthday plans and holiday coordination, went almost completely silent where Nathan was concerned. My mother, heartbroken as she was, stopped inviting him to Sunday dinners for the better part of the year. My father didn't speak to him for 5 months. I sent screenshots, the real ones, along with Jimmy's metadata report, to the softball league group chat and to the mutual friends who'd gone quiet on me. I didn't add commentary. I let the proof speak for itself. Within a week, most of them had reached back out, awkward and apologetic. Tyler, the guy who'd texted me that he thought I was better than that, called and left a voicemail so full of apologies, I actually felt a little bad for him. I didn't call back right away. Some trust, once spent, takes a while to rebuild, even with people who didn't mean to spend it. Camille and Trevor's wedding, scheduled for that April at a venue out on John's Island, nearly got derailed by whispers from Trevor's extended family, who'd heard the second-hand gossip and hadn't yet heard the correction. Camille handled it the way she handles everything, directly, without apology, sending Trevor's mother the full documentation herself rather than waiting for it to blow over. It worked. They got married as planned, and I stood up as a guest, not a groomsman, watching two people I respected build something real while my own marriage sat in limbo. As for Lauren and me, I won't pretend this part had a clean, satisfying answer, because it didn't. She moved back into the house alone for a while, and I stayed with a friend from Palmetto Row's early days who had a spare room in Mount Pleasant. We went to counseling starting in February, twice a week, with a therapist downtown who specialized in trust and infidelity, even though, and this became its own strange, exhausting conversation in nearly every session. There had been no actual infidelity, just the wreckage infidelity leaves behind, built entirely out of a lie. I need you to understand something, I told her, in maybe our 6th session. Even now that you know the truth, I need to understand why it was so easy for you to believe it. 9 years, Lauren, and it took my brother 3 months to convince you I was someone else entirely. She didn't have a clean answer for that. Neither did I, honestly, for a long time. We talked about her own family history, a father who'd actually cheated on her mother when she was 14, a wound I'd known about but never fully understood the depth of until we sat in that office working through it. It didn't excuse what happened. But it did, slowly, start to explain it. By June, we'd moved back in together, cautiously, still in counseling, still working through it in the kind of unglamorous, day-by-day way real repair actually happens. Nothing like the dramatic reunion you'd get in a movie. I won't tell you everything was perfect. I won't tell you I never felt a flash of old anger when Nathan's name came up at a family dinner. But I will tell you that by the end of that summer, we were still together, still working at it, choosing each other again on the days it would have been easier not to. Nathan, for his part, eventually reached out in August with a long text apologizing, saying he'd been in therapy himself, working through what he called a lot of anger I didn't know how to point anywhere except at you. I read it twice. I didn't respond for 3 weeks. When I finally did, it was short, just that I appreciated him getting help, and that rebuilding trust with him, if it happened at all, was going to take a lot longer than a text message. We're not close the way we used to be. I don't know if we ever will be again. But he's back at family dinners now, quieter than he used to be. And last month he actually thanked me, sincerely, without an agenda I could detect, for not cutting him off completely. Palmetto Row Creative had its best year yet. Camille and I never once discussed what happened without both of us landing in the same place. It wasn't our fault, and letting it change how we worked together would have been letting my brother win twice. Looking back, I think about that phone call in September, the one where Nathan asked for $11,000 and I said no. I still think it was the right call. Money doesn't obligate you to hand over your family's stability, and it certainly doesn't obligate you to hand over your marriage. But I also think about how much damage came out of that one uncomfortable conversation. How far one person's resentment can travel when nobody stops to check where it's actually headed. Trust, once it's broken by someone you didn't even see coming, doesn't rebuild itself in a straight line. Mine and Lauren's is still a work in progress, some days steadier than others. But we're still here, still choosing this life together, and my brother is not living in my guest room anymore. That, I think, is its own kind of ending. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more family-centered accounts like this.